Hello all and welcome to another round of the Developers Workshop podcast. For those of you who are new to the workshops, the aim is to bring together game developers and industry professionals to discuss development processes, active projects, and also give budding developers a chance to draw on the knowledge of their peers. Joining us today, we have Christian Allen from Serellan. Say hi, Christian.
Hey, you pronounced it correctly. Great. Nice to see you guys.
We also have Paul Kilduff-Taylor from Mode 7 Games.
Hello, it's great to be here. I feel a bit left out because I think I'm the only guest who wasn't a member of the military at some point in their past. But I'll try and keep up.
There's still time. To provide a PR perspective to the conversation, we have Max Rampage from Cold Furnace Studios.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's great to have you here again. And sending his apologies today is my partner in crime, Jay Adaloy from Drop Dead Interactive, who would have loved to have been here today, but he forgot about a Valentine's Day engagement, so yeah, best to do that. Now, my co-hosts today are Eric Jackson, senior writer from EXL Gaming.
Hello, everybody.
Digital Falcon, also a writer for EXL Gaming.
Hello, everybody. What's going on?
And our special guest co-host is Jabari Clark from the Council.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Excellent. So to kick things off, let's hear a bit from all of our developers here about your industry experience and the projects that you're currently working on, starting with you, Christian.
Yeah, so I've been in the games industry about 15, 16 years, something like that. Started as a modder. I was the creative director on the Ghost Recon series. Worked my way up from assistant designer to CD. Started on Island Thunder. Finished up with Gra 2. Then I was the design lead on Halo Reach. I also did some work on Shadows of Mordor, Mad Max, and I recently shipped a title called Epsilon in early access on Steam, which is a squad-based tactical shooter focused on non-linearity tactics and things like that. So I've been doing this a while.
You most certainly have.
It's a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
I've been busy.
That's a hell of a resume.
Indeed. And over to you, Paul.
Well, I've been in the games industry not quite as long as Christian, about 11 years, and I've worked in indie gaming the whole time. Never had the AAA experience, for which I guess I'm slightly grateful. But we started Mode 7 properly in around myself and my business partner Ian Hardingham, and yeah, we've done 3 games so far. Our first game was a terrible sword fighting game I won't go into. Our second game was called Frozen Synapse, which is a simultaneous turn-based tactical game.
Awesome.
That did pretty well, and kind of came out across a variety of different platforms, won some awards and stuff, and that really kind of established us as a real company. And we followed that up last year with another simultaneous turn-based game called Frozen Cortex, which was kind of a futuristic robots playing a weird sport game. And now we've just announced we're doing Frozen Synapse 2. So a lot on my plate as well.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Mr. Max Rampage. And I just have to say, like, that is, of all the names I've ever heard, Max Rampage, like, that's very commanding.
Well, that's what I like to hear, coming from the military world, so thank you. So, yeah, I'm the smack talker, aka the community rep for Cold Furnace Studios. We're a startup in Atlantic Canada. And we have a mixture of ex-AAA types and current serving and ex-military in our ranks. We're working on a military-themed first-person shooter / RPG, so kind of like a deranged love child of Fallout and Call of Duty, so to speak. Nice. So we're in the budding phases, so to speak, of this, but things are coming. We're under the working title right now of The Undying for the game. However, we'll be releasing the franchise title, the debut game title, and logo within a week.
Which is extremely exciting. So I've been following the progress of Cold Furnace since the day that they were actually announced as being a part of the ID at Xbox program, and that day I actually got in contact with Max. So I've been basically sort of following along their progress for quite some months now, and I must say I'm busting to know more. This is getting insane. You need to give me some more information.
It's coming. It's coming. What I'm learning as someone who's new to this this particular business is that the initial phases it's all the boring stuff that no one wants to hear about. But we're starting to finally get some things that people want to see. That's not business stuff.
Indeed. Well, I will be waiting for more news any day now. All right, so let's move into one of the main topics for today, which is overcoming roadblocks in development. Now, given that you're all a part of an indie game studio, whether you're making AAA games or indie-sized games, issues like budget constraints, staff numbers, available resources, etc., are all issues that can become very prominent for indie studios. How do you guys manage these issues, either previously with other studios or with the current studio that you're in? Who'd like to tackle that first?
I can, and stop me because I'll always try to talk first. But coming from AAA to indie, definitely there were some roadblocks that I wasn't prepared for moving into independent game development. I guess a good example to talk about on the show would be QA. I had always had a robust QA team behind me. Both at Red Storm and especially when I worked at Bungie. Bungie excels at QA and has massive, QA teams. And so when I moved into independent development, I partnered with a publisher, and they had contracted QA out to an Indian team that had never done a multiplayer title before. And it turned out on our first title, they never tested the title outside their firewall, and so it turns out people with Linksys routers couldn't connect with each other, and that's a good percentage of the population that has Linksys routers, it turns out. So and we didn't have a Linksys router, so we didn't on that. So it's kind of things like that kind of bite you as an indie game dev. Especially if you come from AAA, you just kind of, and especially moving from consoles to PC, you just don't even really kind of think about those kinds of things. So how I've worked to overcome that in my current title, which I don't have a publisher for, we're self-publishing, is we formed a community testing team. So we have about 250 folks that signed up and volunteer, and when we get a build ready, we actually cook it to them first. We have a special build path on Steam. They get it first, and we let it cook with them for hopefully no more than a week, but they basically bang on it and tell us bugs, and and it's relatively informal. We just have a private forum that they can go into and let us know, hey, my frame rate dropped on this map because we introduced a different lighting scheme, or we found out that I didn't even know that there was non-QWERTY keyboards, but one of the versions of keyboards doesn't play well with Unreal key mapping, and he couldn't map the keys correctly. But that's really helped us out. Obviously, for indie, it's free. It does take management, but they're not professional testers, so it's a lot different environment. You kind of have to be very particular of hey, I need you to test this. I need you to look at this. But it's been really helpful, and I think especially being an early access title, people are, they don't want to get buggy products, and there's going to be bugs because it's early access, but it can help to minimize the impact of bugs on the larger player population.
Indeed. Right, that sounds really complicated.
It can be, yes.
Awesome. All right, well, yeah, that's yeah, wow. Very involved. Paul, how about you? What kind of roadblocks do you feel like you've either come in either your current development or your previous one?
So I think one of the really big deals for an indie studio is basically picking your battles with content, because you don't have huge teams of people, particularly artists. So one thing that can cause you a real problem is if you start off with an art style that looks really fantastic and requires loads of detailed work, the cost and time of adding anything to it is enormous. So if you have something like a strategy game where you might want to add some units, or you might want to add some different types of terrain, if you put loads and loads and loads into that art style, you then suddenly find that you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling your costs when it comes to the content phase. So that's something that we've tried really hard to avoid. With Frozen Synapse, have a very pared down aesthetic, so a lot of it is just blue lines of different colors, and you can do a lot with that. So something that I really think it can work well for indie games to avoid that particular roadblock is just picking a style that is evocative in its own right, that allows a lot of creativity, but doesn't require that enormous time investment to just make anything at all. And I feel like we probably slightly got away with that with Frozen Cortex. We did something that was a bit more elaborate. We didn't go completely insane, which was something that we narrowly managed to avoid. But it's nice to be back with Frozen Synapse 2. We're doing a much more minimal art style again. And thinking about adding stuff, it's quite nice sort of how cheap things are, and it allows you to be more creative. So that's one sort of, I guess, tip for people who are starting out anew, is to just consider that as well as how nice everything basically looks.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And if you look at Epsilon's art style, we actually went down a similar path. Obviously, we didn't go as stylized as Frozen Synapse, but if you look at the environments, they're very clean and crisp. We get our art style out of post-processing effects. So the kind of what do they call it? Cell shaded look that we have is actually not built into the textures. It's a post-processing effect, and so our texture budget is very low, and the art assets can be created very quickly. So that one sets kind of a style that we have this clean, crisp, colorized, antithesis to the green and brown that every gall-darn shooter has today, but also allows us to produce assets faster, and also helps us with things like frame rate. We shipped out of the gate running 60 frames a second on our mid-spec machines, and so we can have a lot less texture detail in the scene. That means more enemies, more AI. Specifically, in our case, AI is our biggest CPU eater. So definitely, and one of the things I learned on Takedown, which is our last title, you're never going to compete with AAA games if you're indie, and people will compare you. And so if we got trashed on animations for a game that raised $200,000 on Kickstarter when we shipped the same week as Battlefield because our animations weren't up to par with Battlefield. And it's like, you're never going to win in that. You're going to win somewhere else.
Yeah. I like that look in Epsilon. I played a bit of it last night, and I was like, it's cel shaded, but it's not cel shaded, and I don't know, it was like weird, but I liked it. It
was pretty cool because we actually came up with that look. We were working on a title for a publisher that I can't say what their name is, but they sell a lot of books, and we were developing a sci-fi game for them. And the deal kind of fell through because I guess.
Penny drops. Yeah.
Yeah, and but we had developed that art style because it was designed to be on mobile, and we were trying to make a title that looked really good on mobile, but still ran good. And so after that title kind of went down the toilet, we were like, well, screw it. We have this really cool art style that people seem to like, so let's take it back and apply it to our core fan base.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you were mentioning before about coming out of the gate with 60 FPS. Do you think that, as far as an indie studio goes, with the focus that the gaming community places on the importance of 1080p 60 FPS, even if you've got like an 8-bit side scroller, that development studios are now put under a lot of extra strain to make sure that they meet those minimum requirements?
Yeah, I think PC gamers really expect they expect performance. They expect to be able to change all their settings. If you come out of the gate and you don't have an FPS slider, then you're screwed. You really have to focus on those fundamentals. Now, one of the nice things that's helped with that is the free engines, or the kind of go-to engines, Unity and Unreal, have come a long way in those kinds of things, and things like changing the FPS is relatively, changing the field of view, FOV, not FPS, doing that kind of stuff is relatively easy compared to even the last generation of engines, where it was actually a lot of work.
Indeed. Awesome. Thank you very much for that insight. Max, Mr. Rampage. How's things over at Cold Furnace? What roadblocks have you guys been coming into, and how have you dealt with them?
Well, the biggest roadblock for us, and I guess it's important to point out that our models are, I don't want to say different or new, but it's by no means anyone's full-time business except for the owners at this time. So starting from the ground up, and the biggest roadblock we're running into is time, because not everyone's time is our own. And so, how do you get around that? And I think there's two ways, and one of them's a technological answer, and the other one is a hiring answer. And so the first thing, I guess I'll talk about hiring first because I think it's the most important. Yep. Is when we're trying to bring people in, or last year really was when we were hiring everyone. We've pretty much got everyone we need now. But last year, when you sit down with someone, and you tell them, hey, you're not going to make any money for X amount of time, and and that's really, you start with that, and if they're still interested after that, then you're running down the road towards the kind of personality you want to have working for this kind of a startup. You're talking about people having to work after hours, during family time that's not, that should be their own, that it won't be. So the most important thing is to find the right people, dedicated people, and I think we've taken the time, especially last year, to do that. We're pretty lucky to have received the talent that we found under those conditions. So I think hiring and getting the right personalities is probably the most important thing you can do, especially in a circumstance like our own. Yeah. And so the second solution to that is, once you get the right people, considering the fact that they do have all these disjointed timelines that are hard to synchronize together because we don't all meet at 9 to 5, is having the right programs to work collaboratively together. So for us, what we've been using is a program called Discord, and it's kind of like your Microsoft SharePoint or Google Drive or whatever. It's more tailored towards gaming, but with that, we're able to drop documents. We have our drop videos, documents, concept art, whatever. We have all our side chats and channels, and we can deliver orders, tasks, whatever. And so people, when they do have time, they pop up and they have, in an organized military fashion, so to speak, everything that they need to do. Their tasks are outlined for them, and then they go ahead and they do that and they work on it. It's been working great so far, but we're just about to get into the meat of things, so we'll see how it holds up.
Awesome. Okay, so what we've identified there then is things that indie devs need to be really conscious of is not punching above their weight as far as design concept goes, ensuring that you have realistic expectations about what your finances are going to allow you to achieve, and making sure that you put a plan in place where all of your staff members, no matter where they're located, are able to get together at the same time and be able to use the same programs, or otherwise people aren't going to be able to communicate effectively to be able to produce the product that you're working on. So those are 3 really important keys for any young devs that are listening that are trying to get your foot out of the door. Take that away with you. Have a think about how you're going to implement that into your processes. So I believe that Eric actually has a question for Christian here that's been submitted. Oh, by Eric nonetheless.
I do actually, Bella. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Christian, I haven't actually had a chance to play Epsilon yet, but it is very intriguing. But I think the thing that stood out to me the most was, as I was reading over what the game is about, it was really intriguing that you went with sex trafficking as a base of conflict, for the team. And I was just curious, how did you come across utilizing that? Because I don't think a lot of people realize how big an issue that is in the world, and that it actually is used in funding, wars and things like that. So
yeah, that's an excellent question. So specifically on Epsilon, I wanted to focus on 2 key points. I wanted the cast to be international, truly international. So there's actually no Americans on the team. The main cast members are British, Mexican, Indian, and Serbian. Mainly just because I was kind of just tired of writing, rah-rah USA, generic white dude that has to stop someone that's America. I've written lots of those storylines.
Right.
And it really disappointed me that the one time I wrote a storyline for a Tom Clancy game that was kind of not that. It was very like the ghosts were trying to keep America out of a war, and it was all about a fictional invasion of Sri Lanka. That got punted to PSP for Ghost Recon Predator, and nobody played that, so nobody nobody heard the story. And I don't even think I got credit for it. But the specific storyline about, or the backdrop for sex trafficking actually came from a child psychologist that I know, and she, in kind of her, she helps, troubled children, autistic children, children with learning difficulties, things like that. And she also volunteers and goes to Haiti and helps kids in third world countries. But she is a major proponent of sex trafficking information, and she wrote a paper for Seattle Pacific University about the gravity of sex trafficking. And so I had been following the events in Ukraine at the time when I was kind of learning this information about sex trafficking, and decided to kind of merge those two elements into a storyline, because it is it blew me away. It was funny because when I first wrote our first press release, I think I said something like, 300,000 people are pushed into human or sex trafficking every day.
Right.
And then I went back to Dr. Krushen, and I said, hey, look, I made this press release. She's like, no, that's 300,000 in the U.S. a day, not the world. 300,000 in the United States.
Yeah, it's
and I was
insane.
Like, it is insane. And so I think if games, one of the benefits that I think indie game developers have is that we can tackle issues that AAA development you can't. You couldn't ever write a Tom Clancy story with a story about sex trafficking, because whatever country that you linked that to would flip out, right? And the same reason that Ghost Recon 2 changed the bad guys from China to North Korea, the same reason that Red Dawn the movie changed the bad guys from China to North Korea, the same reason that Homefront changed the bad guys from China to North Korea, because game developers that have studios in China or outsourced to China don't want to piss China off.
Right.
So as an indie game developer, besides people calling you names on Twitter, you don't have that pressure. So you can tackle storylines like that. And I think a lot of games have. I don't necessarily think games get the credit they deserve, but we try.
No, I think that's an amazing subject to tackle, because like you said, even in the U.S., people aren't aware how serious of an issue that is. So that's really cool that you're using the platform to get that word out.
Absolutely. Awesome. And Call of Duty, for example, every other year there is a lawsuit put up against Call of Duty because the main villain is their family is disgusted by the way that their family member's been portrayed as a masochist or whatever it might be. So that is a really big issue, and somehow they managed to navigate it around it, but I think that would be really difficult. So I can see why being in the position that you're in as an indie studio gives you the golden opportunity to be able to really highlight these social issues and put them out there for people to have a good think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I mean, when Ghost Recon 2 got banned in South Korea, or when GRA got banned in Mexico, it was a big deal. But if my game gets banned in South Korea, that doesn't really affect me all that much. So, but South Korea, go buy my game, because I don't say anything bad about it.
That's a great point that you're bringing up, and it's actually something that we're hoping to jump on to help us with our branding. And of course, being our CEO, being a veteran of 20 years, and myself in there 11, and a few of our inspirations, so to speak. I won't go into the IP yet, but one of the issues I suppose you could say we'll be bringing to the forefront is PTSD, and I don't know how much you guys have read about PTSD, but some people think it needs to be shied away from, or it needs to be brought to the forefront, and there's all kinds of disagreement on how to tackle it. And what we believe personally is not only bringing it to the forefront, but reliving those experiences and talking about them and sharing those experiences, and that's what we hope to do through our game. Is not just through graphic violence. There'll be graphicness, yes, but we also want to put the gamer into graphic, morally compromising situations where there is no good decision to make. And one of the scars, to get, for lack of a better word, we want to leave our gamers with is sharing in that experience, and so maybe people could understand that a bit more.
No, that's awesome to bring awareness to that too, because I do think in the world that we live in, we do put a lot of emphasis on entertainment. So you don't hear a lot about PTSD. You hear more about concussions from the NFL, things like that. So that's amazing.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, I'm a disabled vet myself, and I think one of the advantages that games, and specifically indie games, have is that we can be much more responsive to current events and current challenges facing the country, because we can step out on a limb and take those risks. Whereas, Hollywood takes 20 years to make a movie about returning Vietnam vets. It's going to take them another 20 years to deal with, vets coming back, from all around the world, or the vets that were, poisoned by radiation and chemicals in Camp Lejeune, Fort McClellan, El Toro. It's going to take 20 years for mainstream media to come to terms and actually do something cognitive about those things. But indie games today can conquer them.
Exactly, and so without talking about where our game will be taking place, it will have historical relevance that we're absolutely sure will rattle a few cages and maybe upset some people, but it's a story that needs to be told.
I think it's important to do as well, because like we're using the example of AAA games and how they have to be careful about how they navigate around issues like this. When we plug into a game like that, we sit down to a storyline where one country is invading another, or we're dealing with people who may have some sort of disease or impediment or something like that, and we don't really look into the emotional aspect of the side of that, because there isn't an emphasis on those. The emphasis about it is the battle, is the combat, is everything but the actual issue at hand, whereas a lot of indie games these days are able to really make that emotional connection with you and make you feel what's going on, make you understand the pain that these people are actually going through and the problems that they're having in their lives, and that is invaluable. Like when you walk away from a video game and it's actually like it's touched your heart, it's left you with them feels, like that is a massive achievement.
Well, and just to be clear, our approach to this won't be to touch your heart, but to do quite the opposite. We hope we leave a few sick feelings in some people's stomachs.
So you want people to leave feeling like scumbags, like, ugh. That was
nah. I mean, everyone's experience will differ.
Right. No, I think that's awesome, man. I mean, push that envelope.
It won't be a happy ending, you're saying.
Right.
Who knows?
I like when stories push that boundary, because I don't like, seeing the same predictable endings and whatnot. So I think that's good. That
same here. You want to put it on pause and put the controller on pause and just go, wait a minute, okay, which way am I going to go with this?
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, what you
guys
are
are
talking
about? What has happened throughout this game is the gamer having to make those kinds of choices, and they're like, fuck, what am I going to do here? Oh, sorry. What am I going to do here? And there's, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So that's what we're gonna go for.
Now, before we move on to the next question, because Paul is a little bit quieter than the rest of our mics, I just wanted to check, did you have any input you wanted to put in on this, or shall we move to the next question?
Well, sure. I mean, I think from our perspective, it's very different in our games because we don't have realistic modern-day settings. But I really agree with what both of you guys are saying. When you have an indie game, you have the ability to have a singular voice. If you're on a bigger AAA project, there's loads of different concerns. There's marketing concerns. There's the fact that ideas have to go through an entire process of being approved. Whereas with this, if you want to say something about your experiences serving or things that you believe in the world today, that's something you can do through your games. I mean, from my point of view, with Frozen Synapse, one of the things I wanted to do narratively was just explore the idea that the only way the player was interacting with the game was through tactics. The only thing you do is move these little dudes around and shoot other dudes. And I wanted to create a narrative which made the player almost frustrated about that, thinking about my actions are going to have all these secondary consequences for this world and for these other characters, so that it just provided some context for what you were doing. I think players get very bored if they don't feel like their actions have any impact. And even in a game that it has quite a simple structure, giving that context narratively can really imbue your actions with a certain significance, and it can make you feel like you're doing something that's a lot more important. And so yeah, even with a game that's not necessarily tackling those political and social issues overtly, I think those concerns really resonate as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's certainly given us a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on to the next question. It's actually for you, Paul, so since I have your attention at the moment. Frozen Synapse. Now, it's a tactical strategy game that can leave you pulling your hair out. Yet somehow it seems to be oddly addictive and keeps you coming back for more. So, thanks for that. However, the second installment is apparently going to be using open world tactics. Can you tell us a bit about this?
I can't talk about that at all at the moment. What we've done with this is we've just left that phrase there. So Ian, who is the lead programmer and designer, he said, I want the tagline to be open world tactics. And that's based on something we've been working on for about 1.5 years now, and is just starting to come to fruition. I can only talk about it in really vague terms. It's a completely new way of doing single player for this kind of game. We're not aware of any other game having done this exact combination of things before. We have looked at other strategy games, sort of, I guess some things in the genre you'd call grand strategy, stuff like Crusader Kings, things that Paradox might publish. And we've looked at that stuff and gone, well, what's the indie version of that? How can we do something that's like that, that's within our remit, kind of the stuff I was talking about earlier, that's going to really just make the tactical stuff in Frozen Synapse take place in this entire new dimension. And that's it. That's all I can say. We've got some stuff lined up. We've got some interviews and so on that we've lined up in the course of the next month, and I'm going to be at GDC showing the game there. And that's when you'll get the reveal of what open world tactics really means. But we're really happy that people are interested in it, and there's loads of speculation going on about exactly what we're going to do, and that's how we like it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I mean, I didn't think that you were going to be able to give too much away, but that does clarify the direction that you're taking things in. So thank you very much for that. Now, Ken, I think that we have a question here from Trent.
Yeah, let me, all right, there it is. All right, from Trent. Shout out to Trent listening. So he says, when you're designing for a turn-based game, but your action plays out in real time, how do you go about constructing a system that is going to hold up in both cases?
And I believe that was directed towards you as well, Paul.
Okay, so I'm not completely sure exactly what this question means by real time, but in Frozen Synapse, what happens is one player designs a turn for the next 5 seconds, the other player does the same, and then the turns play out together. So I guess this question is about how do you construct infrastructure around that to make that work. And there's a couple of factors there. One is that the entire thing is deterministic. So it really is, the terrain is set, and then both plans happen. So there's no dice rolls in the middle of it. There's no physics, random stuff that can come in and desynchronize the turns. So that's just from a technical perspective, and the sort of higher level technical answer is you spend a really long time writing a server that can do all this stuff, and I'm not the programmer in the company, so I don't know how that was done. I just live in daily awe of Ian, who created that server. So we did spend a lot of time early on making that system. So Ian is Ian Hardingham on Twitter. If you want to ask him questions about that, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. I guess also, yeah, how do you go about constructing a system that's going to hold up in both cases? I think as well, stuff that we've been talking about just around keeping things pared down enough so that that is a realistic thing. yeah, just not sort of massively adding loads and loads and loads of features that have to all be synchronized initially is a good thing to do if you're making a system like that.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for that. So, Trent, make sure you hit up Ian on Twitter and send your follow-on messages over to him. As Paul said, I'm sure he'd be happy to liaise with you further on that. And Ken, while you're still on mic, I believe you have the next question.
All right. I had to move my mic back a little bit. This question is for Christian. When working on when you're working on a game and the primary focus is like for the console build versus the focus on the PC build, like what are the major differences you have to take into account when going through that?
Yeah. That's another good question, and obviously the PC versus the the PC master race versus consoles is a hot topic these days, as it has been.
Very hot these days.
Yeah, glad I'm not at Warner Brothers anymore. But so from a technical standpoint, and this became very clear to me on my last title, which was the first time I'd actually done. Another tip to indie devs: if it's your first time doing an independent development, I don't care if you ship titles that generated $1 billion in revenue. Don't try to do dual platform development for your first title. Do one platform, ship it, and then do the next platform. It fucking sucks. Yeah, I hear you in the background. Yeah, I totally screwed myself on that one. That was totally my bad. I'm like, wow, what's the deal? You just hit the Xbox button, right, and it's done. Obviously, there's UI considerations. Those are pretty obvious with your inputs. The difference in inputs and everything. But I think the two key main differences between considerations for development is hardware and the ship process. So from a hardware perspective, when you're working on console, as long as you're not working on a next generation console that hasn't come out yet, like we were on GRAW, you know what your target hardware is. You know exactly what you have. And the consumer also, and this is a big deal not just for you, because it doesn't matter on PC that you say our minimum specs are that you must have Windows 64-bit system installed. People with 32-bit system will buy the title and they will complain about the fact that it doesn't work. And they will write bad reviews. They are allowed to write bad reviews about a title even if they don't have min-spec systems. So that really matters. It's a big deal, and so you need to have a wide spec of systems to test on. You need to purposely go find testers like in Europe that have non-QWERTY keyboards. Like I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this yet in the podcast, but we're currently having a problem with Unreal 4 doesn't play well with non-QWERTY keyboards. So that's one big difference. Obviously, on console, you might have a few different issues. We had an issue on Takedown where we actually, and this comes to my point about consoles, is certification is one of the big issues. We had an issue on Takedown where if you started the game with a Rock Band controller plugged in, then the Rock Band controller controlled the game instead of your regular.
That's not good.
It sounds funny at the time, but that failed us from certification, and we could not ship until.
Really?
Yes, we could not ship because of that bug, because it was a TCR violation. Now, the big thing for indie developers is when you're a AAA developer, something like that would not keep you from shipping. They would just ship the game and you'd start working on a patch for it. Because when you're a AAA developer, when you're, especially if you're someone like Halo, you can go, okay, well, we're going to ship 11 million units, so the, 50,000 people that happen to have Rock Band controllers plugged in, we'll just deal with them on the side. When you're an indie developer, the platform holders do not give you any leeway. You don't get these waivers that you can get for TCRs and TRCs that you get as a AAA developer. And
You're right, so that's interesting to know. So basically it's celeb status. You got a AAA celeb status, yeah, here's some free stuff, but if you're not a celeb, no free stuff.
Yeah, and part of it's just the bandwidth. They're just not going to, if you're going to ship a title that's going to sell 100,000 units on the platform, they're not going to dedicate, QA testers or, an account manager to spend a lot of time arguing with you about whether you should get exempted from a TCR. If you're shipping a title that's going to, make them millions and millions of dollars, they're going to have a whole team of people dedicated to that.
Mm.
Indeed.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right, cool.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Thank you for that.
That was an excellent question, though, because as a console guy, you kind of want to know the distinction between the both platforms as far as
and that's also the reason a lot of times that you see PC games delayed is past consoles is just because they have to do a lot more QA on them.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it's good that you answer that because recently the PC community, they've been getting kind of screwed in some of these ports, so.
And by recently, you mean the last 10 years?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like really bad now.
Yeah. I mean, it's because until very recently, 5, 6, 7 years ago, PC was considered dead, and so the games industry got into the mode of a PC port being kind of a tertiary product. Like if you look at GRA. GRA 1 was done by a different studio and was a completely different game. And obviously, if you look at recent titles like Batman, you can tell they're ports. They make the game for console, and then either they or another studio, often in China, ports the game to PC. And I think times are starting to change, and you've seen with the Batman controversy that PC gamers are back in force and they have a voice and they're done getting screwed. And I think you're going to see a shift, at least in the marketing. I mean, you've seen with Tom Clancy's Division, a developer came out and said, "Oh, we held PC back for console," and then Ubisoft had to turn around and go like, "Oh no, we didn't. We totally didn't.
Yeah,
it's totally awesome." Even though I suspect they did, because I highly doubt there's a different texture set in PC and console. It's the same goddamn models, the same goddamn textures. But you're starting to see that shift, and I think it's going to perpetuate as PC gaming continues to accelerate. And so, yeah. So I'll shut up and let someone else talk now.
No, man, that's great information.
Man. You're good, man.
It's great insight. It's great insight. Mr. PlayStation Nation Jabari Club, do you have a question for these gentlemen?
Oh, whoa, that was an intro. But yeah, guys, I am a guy that is very interested in VR. As I tried out VR for a PlayStation experience, and I had an amazing experience. So, as game developers that we have here right now, do either of you guys have any plans to be utilizing any of the VR technology on your upcoming releases for future games or anything like that?
For us personally, I don't expect to be using that for our first title. No.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. I mean, that would be very ambitious for an indie studio trying to make a AAA game to also be integrating VR technology. So I can appreciate that.
We're also not jumping into VR straight away. Although I think it's really cool and exciting, I think there's a load of potential for stuff. I mean, there's definitely potential for some things in Frozen Synapse 2 that could be VR, but I still see this era of VR as quite an experimental, exploratory time, and it's best for people who really love VR and really, really know what they're doing to get into that first. And then we'll see kind of where the VR market is going. But it's something that we kind of have in the back of our minds as something that might be a cool, tool to add on to what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to parrot everybody else's answer. VR right now, I think, is just too risky for indies. Unless you're, living off a hedge, trust fund. It's no monetization. You don't know what the market penetration is. I think the loss leaders on this first generation are going to be people like Epic, Sony. They'll push out some titles. It is cool. It has its challenges from a user interface experience. I have nerve damage in my face. I can't wear things on my face. I can't handle things close to me. I got in an accident and things near my face mess me up. And so I've tried VR once. I tried the Oculus. it was neat. Oh, and I tried HoloLens, which is more AR than VR, because my wife works on it. But it's cool. It's just really early, and I think where the innovation is going to come from is the people that have the pockets to do it on this generation, and then I think if it takes off, then you'll see indies jumping into it for the second generation that's going to solve a lot of the issues.
Okay.
Absolutely. So is that a real concern for you with the direction that technology seems to be evolving, particularly for your situation where having things on your face isn't really something that you're going to want to do on a regular basis? Is that something that people would be concerned about as becoming more of the norm, or does everybody really feel that the home console is never ever going to be replaced by something like that, and it's always just going to be a added extra?
I don't know. I mean, I look to 3D TV as a pretty good example. 3D TV arguably was a much better experience than regular TV, and it didn't take off because people didn't want to wear glasses in their living room.
You know what? You're 100% right. I have a 3D TV, and I've put my glasses on to watch it maybe. Oh, in the 4 years I've had the TV maybe 5 times.
Does anyone
gotta watch Avatar?
hate wearing the glasses at the movie theater because I intentionally do not see the 3D movies at the movie theater?
Yeah, same
I
here.
have glasses. I have glasses, and I wear the glasses at the theater. It's annoying, but I mean, I don't mind. But I think VR is so compelling. Well, at least VR in the iterations that are out now. Because me and Jabari went to PSX, and we tried, PSVR. I think it's so compelling that people are going to want to wear it on their face.
Right. I don't think the problem is the glasses. I think the problem is the experience with 3D TV. Mm-hmm. The experience is terrible. It's not better than watching a 2D movie because it often looks blurry and people do this gimmicky cinematography all the time and it's just worse. But people do blame the difficulty of the glasses. But exactly as you said, with VR, if the experience is good enough, people will put up with quite cumbersome stuff. I mean, I really think that we're going to have glasses in some form for this kind of entertainment, and that will take hold eventually. But it has to be worth it for the experience.
I agree.
Okay, awesome. Well, I guess we've got a lot to look forward to in the VR realm. A couple of the gentlemen here, as I've said, they've tried out VR and they're absolutely hooked, and they are ready with their take my money now memes. So we'll just have to see how that goes.
Right now, I'm ready for it. Like,
well,
we need the price and the release date.
Yeah. Price is another issue. I gotta say, I'm personally more taken by AR. After trying, I've tried the Oculus and I've tried the HoloLens, and when I did the HoloLens demo at Microsoft and having the guy walk me through changing an outlet, I think it really impacted me because that morning I'd had to fix my dishwasher, and I was like trying to watch YouTube about how to fix my dishwasher while I had my hands in the drain, and then I'm getting my nasty hands on my phone, and it was like, and then later that day I'm playing with the HoloLens, and I'm like, if I had a HoloLens, I could have just put it on, and the guy could have told me, I could have played the video in the corner while I'm fixing the dishwasher, and it would have been awesome. And so I think there's some really neat real-world applications with AR, whether it's going to be HoloLens or whatever the heck Magic Leap is supposedly coming up with. For me, that's what's really exciting, and I don't know if gaming's going to be as huge a part of that as VR. VR clearly I think is more gamer focused than AR is, but there's some cool possibilities in the future. But I still don't like things on my face.
I can completely appreciate that. It also comes down to, I guess, like temperature and stuff like that. Like during the summer, if you don't have good air conditioning, having something like that on your face for a few hours as well, it's not going to be particularly comfortable. So, I know, we're just going to have to see how it goes. I'm not going to speculate on it until I actually get to try it for myself because I'm a big believer in don't have an opinion about something you know nothing about. So I will wait until I actually try it for myself before I give my views on it. Mr. Rampage.
Rampage.
Can you, just for those who are actually starting out in the indie industry, particularly even maybe in your shoes as a community manager, tell us a little bit about how you found the industry when you came into it, because this is your first experience as being in I guess, an active role of a development studio. So what has it been like for you going through that process?
If I had to sum up in 2 words, friendly and immensely complicated. So I'll explain both those. But less the AAA guys who won't ever talk to you. But less the AAA guys, I find most the different people in the industry to be very friendly. We have other indie developers or commentators or you guys. There's lots of people out there for indie game developers to go out there and seek the help that they required or get feedback or whatever. And people aren't just like willing to do it; they go out of their way to do it. So it's a really friendly environment from that side. The reason why I say immensely complicated is in my shoes. I'm a community manager. I was brought on because I knew the CEO, and B, he liked how I am with people, and that's my job as a community manager. But do I know anything about programming or actually physically building the game? No, I do not. So it's been a steep learning curve for me, especially when people ask me questions and I have no clue what the answer is, or even where we stand with it. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting question, and then I have to really quickly text or call one of our programmers and be like, hey man, what the hell is this guy talking about? And then they explain to me, they're like, oh, okay. And then I go back and be like, yeah, we're gonna be using Unreal 4 because of this engine. This engine's amazing and whatever. So it's immensely complicated. But there's the people within your organization who are the experts to help you, and it's fun. And I'm always learning, and I can actually kind of keep up with these conversations now. And the last thing, specifically from a community management perspective, is the market you're trying to reach in this business is incredibly fragmented. So there isn't one place where all gamers go. It's everywhere. You got to be. There's a plethora of diverse little communities everywhere, and you got to have your fingers in all of them and get to know all those groups of people if you actually want to get your product and your name out there. So getting on all the different social media mediums, getting involved in Steam communities, getting involved in online forums, blogs, whatever. Doing workshops like this, you gotta kind of spread yourself around and do it all because there isn't a one-stop shop.
Which one do you think is your best place to get that feedback from? Is it Twitter, Facebook, the
For
forums?
feedback, specifically on game development feedback?
Twitter.
I mean, I don't know. It depends who we're trying to talk to. I think Twitter and Facebook give us the most direct means, and easy. I find it really easy to find specific people that you're looking for on those two social medias. So, we get a lot of feedback from those two. The other ones, maybe Twitch, but I haven't seen a lot come through there. So I find, if you had to start with two, Twitter and Facebook, and then expand to all of them from there.
Because Twitter, Twitter is funny because you have a lot of trolls, and now that everybody's so against indie games, which is just crazy to me. How do you handle all those people that will try to bash a game instead of trying it out or things like that?
I personally find I haven't found too much trouble with trolls. I ran into some. I was actually laughing with Bella. I ran into some yesterday. But I go.
Yes, Facebook. Blessed
it's just
Facebook.
ignoring them is probably the best thing because if you try to get into a specific argument, it's not going to get anywhere. However, if the haters, so I'm doing air quotes, if the haters, actually are raising relevant points, maybe the way they're saying it isn't the nicest, but I'm in the military, I don't really care about feelings. So, if they have some relevant feedback to tell me, I'm whether I don't like them or not, I'm still going to listen to it, and we'll bring that up with our studio. But so I wouldn't say ignore them completely, but don't get wrapped around the axle and
we should have a call after you ship. Sorry, I got into it last night on Twitter. Personally, it really depends on your platform. If you're Steam only, one of the key mistakes I made on the last title was I didn't personally pay enough attention to the Steam forums. Because coming from a Xbox-focused community, it's not a big deal if you don't go onto the Xbox.com forums and post, right? It's a huge deal if you don't go on the Steam forums and post. being both the creative director and the kind of community manager / face of things, one of the things that's different from indie development and AAA development is that things are very personal. So if you're going on Twitter and talking, and you're public, those things are going to be directed personally at you, not at Ubisoft. So that changes the tenor of things. When you're trying to get creative, feedback, when someone goes to a forum, they have to log in, they have to start a new thread, and then they have to type out a question and hit send, right? Same with an email, right? So they're not going to do that to tell you to go rape yourself. Twitter makes it very easy for them to tell you to go rape yourself. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely challenging. One of the things that I've tried to do, and sometimes I get suckered back in, is I try to leave Twitter at work. And so when I'm actually sitting in front of my PC, that's when I deal with Twitter. And I also don't accept fans on Facebook, and so I kind of try to channel them to forums and email and various different channels that way, because then you're generally, if you're going to go to a forum and complain about a game, especially, then chances are, 1, you played the game, and 2, you own the game, and 3, you actually have a point to make. You're not just being mean to be mean. And so it is definitely challenging to filter, and it's much more challenging for an indie game developer than it is in AAA. But I'm not saying it's not important. It's just very hard these days.
Absolutely, yeah. While we're on that point, particularly given that you've come from large studios and titles such as Ghost Recon and Halo, how have you found the difference between the social face that you have to have versus the social face that now being in an indie studio that doesn't have perhaps the backing of a title like Ghost Recon? What's the difference between that? Like, are you finding you have to spend a lot more time interacting with people?
No, I would say I might spend a little more time doing it, because I did it a lot on Ghost Recon specifically, because Ubisoft really didn't have much community management back in the early 2000s. So I spent a lot of time doing it. I mean, the difference, there's 2 differences. The biggest difference is you don't have a filter when you're independent, and that's good and that's bad. There's no way some of the things that I say about the industry or my games or games in general I could say in AAA, right? I couldn't come out and say, what happened with Batman on PC? Warner Brothers really screwed PC gamers. I could never say that publicly, right? Especially when I worked at Warner Brothers. I could think it, but I couldn't say it. And I also couldn't be honest about some things in the game. We had things that happened that I had to run every public interaction I had through PR. Every forum post had to go through PR. Anything that I said had to go through PR. And most of the gaming companies, like specifically at Warner Brothers, they have policies that all your social media is covered. Technically, if you work at Warner Brothers, any division of Warner Brothers, you can't technically comment on about anything that is produced by Time Warner Inc. That includes everything produced by Warner Brothers. That includes CNN. That includes anything on the WB channel. Like, technically, they can stop you or fire you if you go and say that someone on CNN is a dumbass on any platform. So it can be, not saying they're competent enough to do that, but by the technical wording of their documents, if I went on Facebook and said Mortal Kombat sucks, they could fire me. But that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because you're always on message. You got your little key card with your key talking points that you want to hit. Like, don't forget to talk about the PS4 version. Don't forget to talk about the exclusive DLC for Xbox. You've always got those points, and they help you and they prep you. And honestly, PR has trained me over the years to be the public speaker that I am. And without that help from marketing and PR, I wouldn't be as good a salesman as I am, because I can sell anything to anybody now. But the downside is you have to be sometimes almost dishonest. You try not to be, But when you know that a game is shipping with a game-breaking bug that is going to be in the first 100,000 units because it was printed on disk and you can't patch it, then and those people are going to have to return the game, but you're not allowed to say that, and I'm not going to say which game did that. That sucks. So when people are going, I don't understand. Well, why is my game crashing all the time and his isn't? It's because well, you got one of the first 100,000 units and the discs were printed wrong, and they decided not to recall them. So sorry, but you're not allowed to publicly say that. You say, you must have a bad disc. Go ahead and return it, even though we do that. Because PR doesn't want to come out and say, hey, we shipped 100,000 bad games, and so. That's where the restrictions come in, and you get that's where you get these like really weird, stupid excuses for things that people say, like, oh, we didn't want to do that because the game's so awesome that if we put it on this platform, then it would be not awesome enough, so we're not going to do it. They don't come out and say, yeah, it's not going to sell enough units on that platform, so it's not worth our money and our time to do it. And as an independent developer, I can say, yeah, I want to work on console, but they need a bit more robust early access program, or actually ship me a goddamn dev console instead of making me fill out yarns and yarns and yarns and yarns of legal agreements. Sony, you want me to work on PS4? Send me a goddamn dev kit. And so you can come out and say that. Now, does that win any points? To do it when I go back to AAA, someone's going to comb through my Twitter and say, "Oh, yeah, you said bad things, 5 years ago." Probably at some point it'll screw me. But all right. But yeah, that to me is a difference. It's easier when it's filtered, but you can get yourself in trouble when you don't have a filter, especially if you have a very loud mouth.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's one of the things that I'm very careful about with what I do is what I do and do not say to people, because there will be that one person screenshotting that one thing where you were having a bad day and you finally cracked your biscuit online, and it'll come back to haunt you.
Yeah, especially when hashtags are involved. That's when I really get involved.
Right?
Oh, yep.
Anyway, so sorry, Paul, did you have something you'd like to add to that?
I just said hashtag crack your biscuit. It really wasn't worth waiting for.
I'm so glad we revisited that. That's awesome.
I think we should get that trending.
Before we move too far away from the conversation we were just having about VR, I believe that one of our listeners has a question for you developers, Eric.
Yes, actually, Trent has been given some pretty good questions and comments in the chat. But he said, he asked the question. He's heard many developers say that they aren't interested in VR. In the VR space because of the serious drop in graphical fidelity, stylized versus realistic, that comes with it. Is that a factor for any of you?
Not really. I don't think it would be a factor if we did decide to go for VR or not. I mean, that's probably something that would only affect really, really high-end games, I would guess. So for most indies, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I agree. It's not performance; it's user experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I saw games of all different types. At PSX, of course. So I mean, I don't see how that would deter people.
It shouldn't.
It's not the users that are going to be deterred necessarily by that, because as a gamer, typically we are interested in the experience and not what it looks like. We can deal with a little bit of a frame drop here and a little bit of shadow issues over here, but when it comes to the overall experience, if you're going to immerse me, if you're going to captivate me, if you're going to make me want to come back and replay that game, then all of those things no longer matter. But from a developer's viewpoint, depending on the type of game that you're planning on putting out, those could actually be quite some important factors to take into play, because you may be looking to make something that is visually stunning, but you're not going to be able to achieve that if you have limitations placed on you by VR and vice versa. So I think that's where Trent was going with that question.
I think what you're going to see is, I think just look back at Wii. Wii is the perfect example to compare to VR.
Yeah.
Ported content was not successful on Wii. People wrote off Wii because of performance and its capabilities, but certain titles like, say, Just Dance were huge and made millions and millions and millions of dollars. So the content that was tailored for the platform and the user experience was successful. The content that was not tailored for the user experience or was ported crap was not successful. So I think that's how I would look at VR. When you have, and I think you're seeing that. I mean, that's what people are moving for, is focused content designed for that user experience, because just porting Call of Duty to VR is not going to be successful.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely has to be built for VR.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I would go playing something like Call of Duty on... I mean, all right, hang on. If I was a camper, VR in Call of Duty would be amazing. But outside of that, I don't think that I would, as a avid Call of Duty player, I would be interested in adding a VR aspect to it at all.
Don't knock it till you try it.
Yeah, I don't know, because I played Rigs, and that's a pretty fast-paced game, and there's no camping in that game. You're running and gunning, But I see what you're going at, Bella, though. Honestly, but I think we'll see.
I've known people that hated the concept of VR and then put it on and they were just like, oh my god, it's amazing. So I don't know. I don't know. You might change your mind about that. It's pretty compelling.
Yeah.
At least to me.
Well, I mean, I'll wait until I try it, until I make up my mind for sure. So, Eric, I believe you have a question for all three of our developers here.
Oh, yes. Well, actually, I'm going to direct this one at Paul first. When it comes to Frozen Synapse 2 or any of the other titles that are in your library of games, do you have any desire or thoughts on bringing them to Xbox Live or PSN? Excuse me.
Yeah.
And particularly...
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Finish your question. I jumped in too early. Oh, wait.
No,
it's fine. Go.
Well, no, I was going to also add in PS Vita, because when I look at Frozen Synapse, I kind of look at that and say, wow, that could be really awesome in a cross-play scenario or cross-buy scenario.
Sure. So, obviously, our games have quite complicated UIs, so that can make console stuff difficult. We did Frozen Synapse Prime, which was a PlayStation and Vita port of the first Frozen Synapse. And that required, another developer worked on that. We worked with them on the UI, and that required a decently sized team, quite a long amount of time, and a fairly hefty budget for them to make that console version. And then that did quite well. But we've always found that doing that kind of development on our own stuff ourselves, we're a pretty small team. There's only 4 of us in-house and a bunch of freelancers, so we don't really have the capability to do simultaneous releases. But if things do well, and it's a lot easier to develop for those platforms than it was for PS3 and Xbox 360. If Frozen Synapse 2 does well, then we certainly would look into doing it in-house. But it's always going to be, for that kind of game that suits the PC more, it's always going to be sort of PC first, at least initially, and then we see where it's going, because it's quite a big risk. We were just talking about stuff that's not kind of appropriate for a platform. That kind of thing isn't that appropriate for console, so if it happens to not work, it will really fail quite hard. So,
okay, right. Got you. And what about you, Christian? Any thoughts on Epsilon coming to console space?
I'm kind of on the opposite space. My content for Epsilon is kind of right down the console direction. We already work with the 360 controller and the Steam controller. Planning, however, is a little bit of a pain in the ass with the controller. I haven't quite figured out how that could work, because we have pre-mission planning where you can look through security cameras and tag guys, and then you can see them on the map, and you can plan where your team can go and all this various different stuff. That's a bit of a challenge. It's one of the reasons that Rainbow Six stopped doing that, was because of consoles. But right now, we're in early access. The game's still got a long ways to go, a lot of content, so we're just trying to focus on one platform, get that cooked, and then maybe look at Xbox or PlayStation down the line. I know there's some really passionate PlayStation fans that were really disappointed that our last title didn't come out on PlayStation.
Yes.
And
I'm one of them.
yeah. That wasn't our choice. We actually had a whole plan for a company to help us with that, but money was the issue. So and money, like Paul was saying, it's a risk. If you're going to spend however many hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to bring it to a platform that you're not sure of, it's scary. But the nice thing about focusing on PC first is, we can get things like the controller mapping tweaked and worked out on PC before we bring it to console. So it's a better direct to customer market than consoles are. Discoverability for a small indie title on a console is really challenging. We don't have any marketing budget to spend. The biggest press we get is when we partnered with Razer to implement their chroma effects into the game, and I got some pretty sweet gaming hardware out of that too. But there's not those kinds of opportunities for free marketing on console that you can get on PC as well.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Max, am I right in understanding that you guys are planning on releasing on every single digital device ever made, including the Apple Watch and the Atari?
Yeah, so that's why I kept quiet when that statement was like, yeah, make sure you just release on one platform at a time. I was like, ew.
You got the money in the back, and go for it, man.
I'm going to be able to play this game on my microwave. That's how many devices they're releasing on.
Yeah, that's right. The microwave platformers are most popular. No,
Hey, we're getting there.
We're looking at Linux, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox are our biggest one, as well the NVIDIA Shield being
Nice.
mixed as well. So those are the platforms I'm interested. I don't myself understand technically how it's done, but the chief creative officer explained it to me that the way they're building it, and then the way they're going to build it will be easier for them to then release it on each platform. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, some of those platforms like PlayStation or Xbox might actually help us with making it run on their system.
Right. Okay, awesome.
On the console side of things, is there any features that these generation consoles have that is intriguing to you guys that you will put your games on the platform?
So, for example, things like the touchpad on the DualShock 4 controller.
On the rumble triggers on the Xbox controller.
I don't think we've necessarily thought outside the box like that in terms of where we're going to be using our controllers. I mean, it's going to be a similar button mapping that you'd find on any platform for your first-person shooter style games.
Obviously, the Elite controller has got to be something that everybody, like anyone who's developing on consoles at the moment, you would have to be looking at the Elite controller as a consideration to how you can actually maximize button response and stuff like that. That controller is it's amazing.
Yeah, and of course, when we get to actually programming the button mapping, we'll be looking at whatever is most current and trying to maximize it as best we can.
One of the things I'm looking at is actually I'm prototyping it right now for the squad control or the Xbox controller is actually utilizing trigger input range to simulate trigger squeeze for weapons. So unlike how you pull the trigger in the real world affects how your weapon responds, and I don't think any games have really tried that before. I wanted to do it on Ghost Recon, but it was deemed too hardcore by other people. So that is an example, even though it's not a new technology, it's just Xbox does track trigger range. You can say, okay, between 10% pull and 80% pull, activate this event. So that's neat. And the biggest thing for me that's changing on consoles is just the move to both the cloud storage and just the size of things are not restrictive anymore. An XBLA title used to have to be under 2 gigs, and so that was really restrictive. DLC had to be a certain size, and now that's kind of all gone out the window. So I think that's a good change for gamers and game developers that we now can have the bandwidth.
Something similar to that.
That's a really good point that you brought up. Just to jump on there real quick, and how you actually go about getting the data to do that is something we're doing that I think is perhaps unique. Is in the military. Okay, I'll try to use civilian terms. So in the military, there is a guy in the artillery specifically, and he's called the Master Gunner. Pretty cool name. Basically, imagine a wizard who knows everything there is about ballistics. And his job in the military is trials and evaluations on selecting future equipment that we're going to use and then testing them. And he puts all the military equipment through different various tests on their ballistic patterns and things of that nature. So that guy we actually have working for us in Cold Furnace. And what we were able to do is we took our programmers, our developer, even our game artists, and we brought them out to the range, and we had them shoot all the various kinds of small arms that we had, and to give them the physical, like the feel, so they understand the weight of the weapon they're carrying and how things that you're talking about, like trigger pull, are affected by the type of weapon you're using, even and when you're trying to hold it in different positions. And so we to actually get the knowledge that's in the Master Gunner's head, that the technical knowledge he's going to give them, to help them actually, in their own creations, we physically brought them to a range and let them experience the weapons themselves.
Awesome. Paul, I think you were trying to input something into this subject?
I was just following on from the earlier point that one of the best things about this generation of consoles is just the infrastructure behind them. The fact that it's much more like developing for a PC, the fact that you can be more flexible with the kind of server stuff that you do than you were able to do before.
Yeah.
The fact that the platform holders are actually letting you do stuff, like crossplay, which was a big no-no years ago. That's kind of the main thing. Why I think it's a little bit difficult to sometimes single out specific console features unless they really suit your gaming and you're making some sort of Octodad type thing that requires tilt or whatever. But actually, like the whole approach, the ethos that we're seeing, certainly Sony really led the way with indie games for this, and Microsoft with ID at Xbox have really kind of been catching up there. They're trying to make things acceptable and practical, and that's really the coolest thing for us. So it's kind of a boring answer, but I think it's an important thing to say.
Yeah, and it's a huge difference from what it was years ago. Years ago it was AAA, and that was it, and you did it their way, and you kept it a secret, and blah blah blah. And it's funny you mentioned crossplay because crossplay was going to be the big thing, right? Remember Shadowrun on the 360? But since Microsoft failed at it, then it was like, well, I guess that's not a thing because we screwed it up. Hello, Games for Windows Live. That's
opening up some old wounds, man.
I got lots of ammo here. I could talk all day about this stuff. But I think that's a huge difference, and I think that Microsoft and Sony have learned from Steam, that opening, like making it easier for developers to get to gamers is going to make them money and sell consoles. And I think also Microsoft learned by having its foot in its mouth with this current generation of console launches that you got to focus on gamers first.
Yeah, that's it. And I think making stuff accessible to developers is actually going to work kind of ground up for you. If you're doing this for indies, then you're going to make something that's much more flexible for the bigger studios as well. And it's taken such a long time, but it's actually a really cool time to be thinking about working on console platforms to just have this openness. I think we've never had it so good, really.
Yeah, and I do think that kind of bottom-up approach is starting to take root. Like when I was working on Halo Reach, it was really about driving the platform. So it was about, party chat was directly driven by a lot of the developers at Bungie because, Microsoft said, what do you guys want to tell consoles? Party chat. Okay. Okay, great. But I do think that, as, smaller teams innovate and make titles now that, things like, DayZ, that just take off, the bigger studios and the bigger companies are looking at them.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Excellent. Ken, I do believe that you are the keeper of our final question for this evening.
All right.
Afternoon/morning.
All right. This question was Christian. This question was for Christian, but I'm gonna shoot it to Max Rampage too. Like being in the military, how has that influenced you getting into the gaming industry? Not necessarily the games you play or created, but getting into the industry. Like, how has that influenced you?
Well, for myself, rather directly. The CEO, like I said, has 20 years experience in the military, and he knew me because I have 11, and our experiences overlap. So he knew me personally from work. He brought me on board that way. So that's a kind of very direct way, I guess, that dragged me into the industry.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah, for me it was pretty direct too. I was actually still in the Guard when I started working for Red Storm. I actually had to leave during some parts of development of Ghost Recon 2 to do some stuff with the Army Guard. And I actually dropped out of college because after 9/11 I kept getting activated for just enough time to not be able to finish classes. So that led me to be a little bit more aggressive in my post-military career trying to get a job with Red Storm. But I think it specifically directly affected the fact that I could say when I was getting hired originally, I thought to work on Rainbow Six. It's like, hey, I was a Marine, I was an MP, I'm in the Guard, I know weapons, I can talk guns all day long, and also I'm a good game designer. So it helped bolster that, and obviously military background helps anytime you're applying for a job because people know that you can follow through and that you're going to get stuff done, and and that your knees are totally shot. And so you're not going to take in a construction job. But it helps with networking too. As an indie dev, Uber Strategist is our PR company that's working with us to help promote Epsilon. Shout out to Mario, Kroll, and those guys. But he's former Army, and it's funny because he was Defense JAG, and I was an MP. But also like Chris Keeling, who's I think the head of international content for Wargaming, he's former Army. And so you kind of have that instant, like when you're in the military, when you meet someone else in the military that's in the industry, the creative head of Ubisoft was an anti-tank gunner in the French Army. Wow. Serge Hescott. So when you meet someone that is in the industry that's been in the military, you just kind of have this instant kind of sync that hey, okay, this guy's going to tell me the truth and not try to bullshit me, and those kinds of things. So it helps a lot with that aspect as well.
Oh, okay, cool. I asked that because I'm trying to get in the Air Force, so if I'm in and I get out, remember me.
I was in the Air Force. I had a hard transition from the Marine Corps to the Air Force.
Oh wow.
It turns out an E4 in the Marine Corps is a non-commissioned officer, an NCO, a corporal. In the Air Force, you're not an NCO. So when basically the equivalent of a low private comes in and starts yelling at everybody that their uniform's all fucked up, airmen don't seem to take that well. So yeah. That was
Okay, cool, man. Good to hear that.
Yeah, but go Air Force. Air Force is cool.
All right. We'll see what happens with that. But I'm trying. I'll find out in the next month or two.
Well, we certainly will keep our fingers crossed for you.
All right.
So that concludes all of the submitted questions that we had and the questions that we've come up collectively for you gentlemen. Is there anything in particular that's come up throughout the podcast that anybody is keen to jump in and ask before I move on to the next thing? I'll take that as a no. So moving on to the next part is our wrap-up. And part of our wrap-up is that I'd like to give our developers and industry professional here an opportunity just to, I guess, have a bit of a spiel about what your game is about, why people should go and check it out, and where they can actually go and find either your early access game or the previous game that will entice them into the next thing, or what websites they should visit for more information. Let's start with you, Chris, on that one.
Okay, so Epsilon is a squad-based uh, uh, tactical shooter. It's available on Steam Early Access. It's really early. The current version has 2 maps and pre-planning and squad orders and various different things. If you're a fan of the older SWAT series or Rainbow, this will be right down your alley. It's got kind of the pre-mission planning of Rainbow Six with the in-game squad on-the-fly ordering of SWAT. Nonlinear environments, focus on international play. We've got a really cool storyline. The story is told through graphic novel style. That's written by one of the one of the concept artists from Walking Dead. So we've got a lot of cool stuff. One of our cool things is that because it's early access, we're selling right now at the $7.99 price point. If you buy at that price point, you get the game and all its content forever until it's done.
Oh, I'm so glad I'm on that early access then. That's awesome.
Yeah, so as we release content, that price is going to go up. So the price will jump up to $14.99 or $19.99. It's eventually going to end at the $39.99 price point that you'll see as a standard PC game. So if you get it now, you're getting it, the entire game for $7.99, and in exchange you put up with some bugs and not, and the game's not done. But you also get to help. We have votes on our forums about what weapon's coming next. I need to put one up today, like the new weapon that we just added last week, the 36C. Not the G36, because that'd be a violation of Heckler & Koch's trademark. The 36 was voted on by the community, which one they wanted.
I like that gun.
Yeah. So we're trying to update as much as we can. We're working with the community test group. If you want to check out the game, you can go to Steam and just search for Epsilon. It'll pop up. You can go to epsilonthegame.com, and you can come to our website, Serellan.com, which is Serellan. And yes, it's pronounced Serellan, even though it's not spelled that way. And that's got information about Epsilon and our previous project Takedown. You can come on the forums. I'm on there. You can follow me at Serellan. The game is at Epsilon. The game is Epsilon. The game at Epsilon. The game is just the game stuff. Other things I tweet about, but. Yeah, so come check it out if you are a fan of squad-based tactical shooters and not a fan of or want to try something different than linear cinematic shoot 'em ups. Then take a look.
Awesome. And for anybody who doesn't want to have to navigate away from where they are at the moment, check the description. I've actually added the early access link for Steam for Epsilon in there. We've also got a link to Paul Mode's website there, so you can go and check out not only the game that he's currently developing, but all the previous amazing stuff that he has done. And we have a link there for Cold Furnace too, so you can go and have a read up a little bit about what they're doing. But leading on from that, Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the game that you're making right now and why people should be excited for it?
Sure. So if you haven't come across Frozen Synapse before, it's a multi-award-winning, simultaneous turn-based game. We really wanted to make a strategy game that was specifically about tactics and about bluffing, about outwitting your opponent, about reading a randomly generated level and making a plan that uses the terrain of that level sort of very quickly. And one of the things that we wanted to do initially was cut away all of the long setup phase. If you played a game like Laser Squad Nemesis or the early XCOMs, you'd have that really, really long phase before you encountered the enemy. So we just get rid of that. We put you in a randomly generated situation straight away. And that was something that people liked. So I do recommend you check out Frozen Synapse. I think it's still discounted on Steam at the moment if you haven't played it. And we're working on Frozen Synapse 2 right now. And the idea behind that is, as I alluded to earlier, is to take that framework and our experience making our last game, Frozen Cortex, and put that all together into something much bigger, something that's going to deliver a much more epic single-player experience that's going to add a lot of detail and richness to multiplayer as well. We think we're the only studio that can really do this. We've got this experience of doing this type of game for a modern gamer. There have been other things, interesting games like Door Kickers and Breach and Clear, which are also excellent games in the same genre, but there's nothing quite like
those are great games.
So do check out Frozen Synapse 2. You can check that out at frozensynapse2.com. If you sign up for our mailing list, you get a free piece of music from the soundtrack, which I think is really excellent because I made it myself, so I'm an authority on that subject. Also, FrozenCortex.com for that game, FrozenSynapse.com for that game. That's probably enough websites.
Awesome. Who's got that take my money now mem ready?
Thanks, guys.
And over to you, Max. Tell us about why everybody should be super hyped to get that press release. That news is coming.
Absolutely. So, Cold Furnace Studios, obviously. Right now, we're still in the stages of putting brains to screens. But we're going to be releasing our franchise name, the first game title and logo within a week or so, possibly 2. And what we're looking at, what we're making is a military-themed, historically based first-person shooter / RPG. So we're looking at having linear parts to it with that linear speed and storytelling, but as well open worlds and open world aspects to the game, similar to your Fallout games. We're greatly inspired by games like that. What we really aim to do is, in making this game and to make it a bit different, is to leverage the literally decades of military experience we have within our company to create a game that's going to turn stomachs, break hearts, by creating a physically but as well morally graphic experience for the gamer, and that's really what we're going for.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm extremely excited for it. As I said earlier, I've been following along what Cold Furnace have been doing since day one. So for me, I kind of feel like I've been there for the ride, and I cannot wait to see what you guys unveil. It's super exciting.
Thanks, Bella.
So thank you very much to everybody who's taken the time out to be here today. It's muchly appreciated. And to all of the people who have joined us in the chat section who popped up some really great questions that created some really interesting conversation. Thank you very much to you too. Christian, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure having you here. It's been a thrill getting to meet you. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. It's fun. I really enjoy getting together with gamers and talking games, and being on a podcast like this with my co-guests that are much accomplished as well is very cool. So I'll probably see you guys at GDC, and everybody else, I hope to see you online.
Indeed, indeed. Paul, I'd like to tell you that I have nothing but warm feelings for your game, but you have made me almost break my mouse on several occasions, which is also a great thing because it means you've done a really good job. Like it's compelling and it's addictive, and there are days where I'm screaming at you and I just hate you. So well done.
Thanks, I think. That's terrifying but wonderful.
And Max, again, obviously, can't wait to hear more. It's going to be amazing. Mr. Jabari Clark, Mr. PlayStation Nation, thank you so much for taking time out to come in and co-host us today. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I was just like a fly in the wall. I had learned a lot on podcast, to be honest with you. So this is great. I really enjoyed myself. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Eric Jackson. Mr. Senior Writer Eric Jackson, thank you so much for all your input today. It's been fantastic, and you've raised a lot of really interesting questions that I think has given out information that's been invaluable. So thank you very much for your time today.
Not a problem. Always a pleasure.
Mr. Ken Masters, a.k.a. Liquid Pain, a.k.a. 14 other names.
I had a lot of fun today. I love listening to these guys, just soaking up knowledge from them, and had a pleasure being here. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up the live broadcast component of this. Thank you again, everybody who's listening to us live. Make sure you tune in for next month because, as you know, every month it just keeps getting better and better and better. I'm not quite sure we can top this list of gentlemen, though, because they're fantastic. So thank you, and catch you in March.